On last night's show, we reported on a trip that Elon Musk made to Israel and a subsequent interview that he did with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the X platform. And we were very critical of both that trip and that discussion, in part because it seemed very clear, although we don't know his motives for sure, so I don't want to pretend that I know them with certainty, but it seemed very clear that it was a response to Elon Musk being in the middle of a 2-week tsunami of accusations against him that he is anti-Semitic. An accusation that is pretty much made against anybody automatically who doesn't immediately stand up and affirm every last precept involving Israel and U.S. support for it. In Elon Musk's case, he was accused of personally endorsing an anti-Semitic tweet when, according to him, he merely intended to agree with the idea that there are some Jewish groups like the ADL that fund anti-white content, meaning diversity programs that teach anti-white content, or open borders immigration, which some people perceive as being anti-white. That was his explanation. But also that there is proliferating on the platform anti-Semitic content, particularly pro-Hamas or anti-Israel propaganda. And as a result of those accusations that were leveled against him, and Media Matters amplified it with a fraudulent study that they also published against Rumble, many corporate advertisers stopped advertising on X. According to the New York Times, X stands to lose up to $75 million in losses from corporate advertisers, Disney and many others who fled the platform, stopped advertising in light of this anti-Semitism scandal aimed at Elon Musk. And CNN has been pressuring other corporations who have continued to advertise to also leave the platform by publishing articles trying to shame them by saying these are the corporations that continue to advertise on X, even though Elon Musk is an anti-Semite. So there is this widespread, pervasive attempt on the part of corporate advertisers to dictate to X what kind of content they can and can't permit on their platforms in terms of political speech, but also dictating to Elon Musk personally what he is and isn't allowed to say upon threat of no longer advertising on the social media platform that he owns. Now, anyone who works in journalism, anyone who works in media, and who has worked within the standard model of how journalism has operated in the United States for decades, which is the model of corporate advertising, knows that that model imposes extremely severe restraints on what media outlets can and can't do. There are certain journalists that they can't hire because the journalists will say things that will offend corporate advertisers on whom they depend in order to survive as a media outlet. Of course, relying on corporate advertisers severely restricts the kinds of opinions you can air, the types of perspectives you can permit, the kind of reporting you can do. What has happened over the last decade is that the media has increasingly moved to a subscription model. The New York Times, I believe, their revenue from subscriptions is now greater than their revenue from corporate advertising. But on cable, on the network news, still almost every media outlet, including the New York Times, depends to a very large extent on corporate advertiser. And that's very much true of social media platforms like Facebook and Google and Twitter, X. And so when corporate advertisers threaten to leave the platform in protest of political speech that's being permitted, what they're trying to do is use their corporate power to censor, saying, we're not going to support you unless you agree to censor this material with which we don't want to be associated. It's a very serious form of corporate censorship. It places meaningful and severe limits on the kinds of things journalists can do. Now, journalists themselves will insist that they never think about this. They don't ever get told, oh, you can't say this because our corporate advertisers won't like it. But it doesn't even matter if that's true, because the kind of person that gets hired and that works their way up in corporate media are the kind of people who are inoffensive generally to corporate advertisers. They just set the limits on not just the kind of things people can say once you work there, but the kind of people who they can even hire, are willing to hire and give a platform to. And that's a serious threat to X, which has struggled in all sorts of ways since Elon Musk purchased it, and well before that as well, financially, figuring out how to monetize and make profitable the large number of users they have on their platform. That's been something that Twitter was struggling for a long time to figure out, which is one of the reasons why it became vulnerable to a sale. And the valuation of Twitter has at least reduced by 50%, if not more, since Elon Musk purchased it for $44 billion. And so having an exodus of corporate advertisers is a very serious threat to X. And that's one of the reasons I think why Elon Musk ran to Israel, to try and stem that tide. And yet, earlier today, he appeared at a New York Times summit called the Deal Book Summit. Deal Book is the name of the New York Times, the part of the New York Times that covers Wall Street, that is led by their reporter Andrew Ross Sorkin, who's well known as being the ultimate establishment servant. And Elon Musk went there, and we'll put the video on the screen. The title of it was Musk's anti-Semitism was not my intention, so he denied the accusations of anti-Semitism. But when he was asked about the specific problem of having corporate advertisers such as Disney fleeing his platform, this is what he said. Listen to this.
Apology tour, if you will. That this had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go fuck yourself.
But
listen to that silence, just the utter silence after he said that, from Andrew Ross Sorkin, from the people in the crowd. And he just stopped and said it. Listen to this.
Go fuck yourself.
But
go fuck yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
well, let me ask you then.
He was referring there to Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, who was one of the main corporate executives who made the decision to stop advertising on X. That was his message, not only in general to corporations that wanted to dictate to X what kind of content it can host, but specifically to the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger. That's what he meant when he said, hello, Bob.
Well, let me ask you then.
That's how I feel. Don't advertise.
How do you think then about?
All right, so when that happened, all sorts of journalists who were in the audience, who were watching live, went onto Twitter to express their horror and shock. And I think they think that in some way Elon Musk dug his own grave. I didn't see any positive comment at all from a single journalist who works at a major media corporation. Maybe there were some and I didn't see it, but I saw a lot and they were overwhelmingly shocked, horrified, and in a way happy that Elon Musk was digging his own grave, because they hate him because he, in many ways, at least, again, not perfectly, we covered a lot of the criticism we had for him on last night's show, but he certainly has refused to take a lot of the censorship orders that almost every other social media platform has been complying with, in part because they don't want to lose corporate advertisers for failing to comply or be shamed by media outlets and the like. And what's so amazing about this is that if you're a journalist, the thing that you should hate more than anything is any force or any influence that tries to limit your freedom to speak. Your reaction, if you're actually just a journalist in terms of your composition, your comportment, your personality, your mentality, when even thinking there might be someone or something trying to limit your freedom to speak, should be exactly what Elon Musk said there. Go fuck yourself. There was only one time in my entire journalism career when I perceived that somebody was trying to limit what I wanted to say. That was when The Intercept refused to publish my article right before the 2020 election that reported on and analyzed the documents from Hunter Biden's laptop and what it revealed about Joe Biden. And when I saw The Intercept wasn't going to publish my article unless I made radical changes to it that gutted the entire thing so that it was no longer critical of Joe Biden, I quit. And I didn't contemplate or deliberate much at all. I started writing about journalism, writing about politics and doing journalism in 2005 when I created a blog, a free blog. And one of the reasons I developed an audience quickly was because I was saying things other people weren't saying. And I had no structure in which I was working. I wasn't paid to do this. I didn't have an editorial structure, a corporate structure. around me or on top of me. I would write, I would fact check, I would edit, and then I would press publish. And I had complete and total freedom to say what I wanted. That was the thing I valued most. And when I got my first offer from a media outlet to go work there, to bring my blog there, which they wanted because I had built up a large audience, and the main currency of internet era journalism became who has an audience and who doesn't, that's portable. It was from salon.com. And I said to them, I'm willing to come and work there, but only if I have complete and total editorial freedom in writing, where I just publish right to the internet. You don't even get to read it first or look at it first. It just goes right up. I press publish just like I do now. And if I think I need editorial assistance or scrutiny, either because it presents a legal issue that might fall on you, or some complicated journalistic ethical conundrum, I'll request it. I have an interest in having you look at it so that we're protected legally. And I did ask for that a few times, and they gave it to me, and we worked, but I never felt like I was being constrained in any way. And then when I got an offer to go do the same thing for The Guardian, one of the oldest newspapers in the West, I told them I would be happy to go, but only under the same condition. And they were shocked. They said, we don't have journalists who just post directly to our website under our name. And I said, well, that's the only way I'll come. And they said, okay. And they gave me that same arrangement. I used to click post, and it used to go right up on The Guardian with no pre-publication review of any kind, let alone attempts to silence me. And then obviously when I left The Guardian and went to The Intercept and created The Intercept with Jeremy Scale and Laura Poitras in the height of the Snowden reporting in 2013, obviously when my contract was written, that exact clause that unless I ask for it, there's no right by anybody to limit what I can say. And they honored that for 7 years until they didn't. And the minute they didn't, I quit. Because just instinctively, as a journalist, I'm never going to allow anyone to limit what I can say. Obviously, it's one thing to say there's no factual basis for what you want to say, but not because of a fear that they'll be accused of helping Donald Trump win or defeating Joe Biden, not for political or ideological reasons, which is what The Intercept was driven by the time I quit. I quit with no plan. I quit in 12 hours after I got their email saying they would only publish my article in the event that it contained these changes. And that's because it was an instinct. It was just a reaction. Like, go fuck yourself. You're going to tell me what I can't say on my own site that I created that was built on my name and my work. But I would have had that anywhere. That's what Elon Musk did there. You think that's in his interest to do that? Of course not. Seems like a visceral reaction. And maybe he's ashamed that he had to go to Israel and did what he did, and he heard people criticizing him for doing it. And he kind of rediscovered this sense of, I'm the richest man in the world. Why would I tell people, why would I let people tell me what I can and can't say? That he used the word blackmail. That's what it is. And what went wrong here is not what Elon Musk said. It's so revealing that so many journalists and people who call themselves journalists and work for media corporations are aghast that anyone would dare tell Disney and major corporations to go fuck yourself when they're trying to limit and censor and control the flow of political content. If you aren't willing to say that to corporations who are trying to limit what you can say, don't bother calling yourself a journalist. And so I think it's very telling and interesting that Musk got to the point where he said it, but I think even more telling is the fact that so many journalists were horrified. We need way more journalists willing to say, go fuck yourself to people who try and limit what they say. The problem is that the people who are hired by these major media corporations and who thrive in them and succeed in them are people who have the opposite instinct. Their instinct is to assuage and serve and placate establishment power, not to defy it. Even though the purpose of journalism is to be adversarial to establishment power, once journalism started getting corporatized, no longer owned by families dedicated to journalism or local communities, but major corporations that have all kinds of other interests besides their media division, and what kind of attributes are awarded to major corporations? People who avoid controversy, who avoid conflict, who avoid displeasing and angering powerful people. That's the corporate ethos. And the corporatization of media meant that that kind of attribute was imported into journalism. And that's why No one almost who works for large media corporations or the media corporations themselves has the courage to say this. They're shocked. They think it's a sign that he's unhinged, when in reality it's just a sign of how cowardly and craven they are. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.